Psalm 86. And here's a couple of great scriptures. Bow down thine ear, O Lord. Psalms 86 verse 1. And then we'll go down to verse 4. Psalms 86 1 and verse 4. Bow down thine ear, O Lord. Hear me, for I am poor and needy. Preserve my soul, for I am holy. O thou my God, save thy servant that trusteth in thee. Verse 4, rejoice the soul of thy servant, for unto thee, O Lord, do I lift up my soul. Preserve my soul, for I am holy. O thou my God, save thy servant that trusteth in thee. We are in Psalms 118, and I'm working off my phone here. Brother Phil and I brought our guitars, but not our Bibles. So in Psalm 118, verse 5, I called upon the Lord in distress. Then we're going to go down to verse 8. It's better to trust in the Lord than to put confidence in man. You can trust in God. He'll take care of you. Then we're going to go back to verse 6. The Lord is on my side. I will not fear what man can do unto me. And so Psalms 118, verse 5. We're in a key of C if you're playing along with us. I called upon the Lord in distress. The Lord answered me. I called upon the Lord in distress. The Lord answered me. Verse 8. It is better to trust in the Lord than to put confidence in man. It is better to trust in the Lord than to put confidence in man. Verse 6. The Lord is on my side. I will not fear. What can man do unto me? The Lord is on my side. I will not fear. What can man do unto me? Verse 8. It is better to trust in the Lord than to put confidence in man. It is better to trust in the Lord than to put confidence in man.
For a look at the news here in Capernaum, this is Roy.
And Joy with the good news.
And the bad news happening every day. Well, here's the bad news. Reports surfaced today of a paralyzed man who had given up hope of ever walking again. It seems he was unable to get to a doctor or hospital, and as you know, doctors are no longer making house calls.
However, the good news is that Dr. Jesus had been seen in the neighborhood, and reports have it that his healing credentials were incredible.
But the bad news is that Dr. Jesus has no plans of making house calls to the paralyzed man.
True, but the good news is this sick man had 4 friends who made plans to carry him to the house where Jesus was visiting.
But the bad news is that everybody in town had the same idea. And when the 4 men arrived with their sick friend on the cot, the crowd was so big that they could not get close to Dr. Jesus, let alone request his healing services.
The good news is the sick man's friends promised him they would find a way for him to see Dr. Jesus face to face.
But the bad news is they carried the paralyzed man to the rooftop and tore a big hole in the roof.
How is that bad news?
It's bad news for the guy that owns a house. There's rain in the forecast.
But the good news is roofs can be repaired. And the man who couldn't walk finally had his chance to see Dr. Jesus. The 4 men let their friend down right in front of the crowd at Jesus' feet. Dr. Jesus said to the man, "Your sins be forgiven you."
But the bad news is there were teachers of the law in the crowd who were shocked to hear Jesus say he could forgive sins. They began to mutter, "Who does this guy think he is? Only God can forgive sins."
But the good news is Jesus used this moment to perform a great miracle. Jesus said out loud for all to hear, "Which is easier to say, 'I forgive this man's sins,' or 'Take up your bed and walk'?" The greatest good news was that the man stood up completely healed from his sickness and his sins.
I must admit, that was good news for that man, but there's still a hole in the roof.
I'd say it might become a famous museum site where they could point out the hole in their roof as a reminder of Dr. Jesus' amazing miracle.
That's a good idea. They could sell t-shirts and postcards.
Yeah.
Well, that's it for the bad news.
Oh, the good news too.
And after all, life is full of bad news. I just report it.
Yes, but if you discover Jesus as your personal friend, he will fill your life with the good news of his power.
So you can overcome the bad news.
Today we will hear the end of the Mystery at Oak Street School, All's Well. But before we do, let's do a quick review. Even though the boys Red, Charlie, and Preston had spent many hours after school in detention for something they didn't do. They were trying their very hardest to show Mrs. Johnson, their teacher, that they were Christians, because they wanted her to believe in Jesus too. They had spent their time in detention reading their Bibles and studying their Sunday school lessons, and they have tried to be as good as they possibly could. And it seems to be working. Mrs. Johnson has started to trust them a little more. But now Mr. Edwards, the principal, wants to talk to them again. And this time, he brought with him a policeman. Charlie, Red, and Preston were astonished when Mr. Edwards came to the detention room for them. Charlie gulped. "I wonder what Mr. Edwards wants with us this time," he thought to himself. He remembered what had happened the last time they were called to the principal's office. "Boys," Mr. Edwards said, "I want you to come with me to my office. There's something I think you should see." With this mysterious message, he led them all down the hall with the policeman following right behind. Inside the principal's office, they found they were not alone. The janitor was there too. "Uh-oh," Red whispered to himself. "What's going on now?" "Boys," Mr. Edwards said, "I want you to know that you are all cleared of the stealing. We now know you are innocent, and I want to apologize for all the time you've spent after school." "You mean you believe us?" Preston asked, sounding surprised. "Yes, Preston," Mr. Edwards replied, "and it's partly because of what Charlie remembered about the noise you heard that night you were here in the school building." "It is?" Charlie said. "Yes, Charlie. After you told me what you had heard, I called the janitor into the office. We talked about that night, and he informed me that he saw no one else come in or out of the building that night except you three boys. At first, that made me even more sure you had stolen the money. Then I started thinking." "You did?" Red asked. "What did you think?" "Well, if no one else had been in or out of the building through the doors, how else could they get into the office?" "Through the window!" Charlie shouted excitedly. "That's exactly right," the policeman replied. "At first we thought the thief had used the door because it wasn't locked. But then when Mr. Edwards thought about what you boys had said, he looked closely at the window. Sure enough, there were marks all over the outside where someone had forced the window open. That's when he called me." "Yes," Mr. Edwards continued. "The policeman arrived. We all looked around. Down in the bushes below the window we found a wallet. There was a name and address inside. When the police checked it out, he turned out to be the thief." "Wow, that guy must have been really clumsy," Preston laughed. "He was," chuckled Mr. Edwards. "After the police questioned him, he confessed and told what really happened. Just about the time you boys were coming down the hall making all that noise, he was on his way out the window. When he heard you three, he tried to hurry and dropped one of his tools back inside. When he tried to get it, his wallet slipped out of his pocket and he didn't even know it. He has confessed to the robbery and cleared all of you. If it hadn't been for you three coming into the school for that history book, we might not have caught him. He could have come back one night, found his wallet, and we would have never known the difference." That sure was good news to hear. The boys felt a whole lot better now. Their names had been cleared and the money had been returned. They hadn't noticed, but Mrs. Johnson had followed them to the office and had been standing at the door listening the whole time. She had begun to trust them a little bit and was curious why Mr. Edwards had called them into the office. "Well, boys," Mr. Edwards said, "you are all free to go. I wish there was some way to make up to you all that time you stayed after school." Red spoke up first. "Mr. Edwards, we understand why you kept us after school. You only did what you had to do." "Red's right. We understand," Preston added. "We'd like to tell Mrs. Johnson, though, because she thinks we did it." "Right," said Charlie, "and we want to apologize to her for making her stay after school every night to watch us. I'm sure she had other things to do." Just at that moment, Mrs. Johnson stepped into the office. "Excuse me," she said, "but I've been standing out here listening, and I know you are innocent. I want you to know that I'm, glad you're innocent. I think you boys are really all right. I just wanted you to know that." You should have seen the surprised look on everyone's faces. They hadn't realized that Mrs. Johnson had been listening, and they were more amazed to hear what she had said. Why, it was the first time Mrs. Johnson had ever spoken a kind word to the three boys. Charlie spoke up. "Mrs. Johnson, we're really glad that the police caught the crook so we won't have to stay in detention anymore. But it's not because of you. We really like you." "You know, Charlie, I really believe you mean that," said Mrs. Johnson as a sort of smile came across her face. "We do, Mrs. Johnson," Red and Preston said together. It gave us time to read our Bibles when we probably would have been just outside running around playing anyway. Yes, Red, I've watched you and Charlie and Preston reading your Bibles. Even sitting in that hot detention room when you could have been outside playing, you had smiles on your faces and you looked happy. I want you to tell me why reading that book makes you so happy. Charlie just beamed. It was like Paul and Silas in the prison. Their guard, Mrs. Johnson, wanted to know what made them happy. Just like the prison guard believed in Jesus, now Mrs. Johnson wanted to believe too. Come on, boys, let's walk on back to the detention room so you can get your things and go home. On the way, you can tell me all about it, Mrs. Johnson said. And one more thing, I'm not angry because I had to stay after school with you. Actually, I rather enjoyed it. As the boys followed Mrs. Johnson down the hall, they looked at each other and winked. They all had the same idea. This was certainly going to be a day to remember for a very long time. They thought about how much they had grown as Christians through this experience. They had learned to thank God for all the things that had happened to them, because He knew just what He was doing all the time. They had learned to be patient and how to witness for Jesus with courage. And now they were explaining to Mrs. Johnson just how she could become a Christian too. Suddenly, Charlie had an idea. Wouldn't it be great if they could start a Bible club right there in Oak Street School? Boys and girls could meet together right after school for Bible study, prayer, and all kinds of good things. Oh, he just had to ask. Mrs. Johnson, I just had an idea. Why don't we start a Bible club in 202 right after school? We could all study together. Wouldn't it be a great idea? The other boys joined in, and suddenly everyone was talking about it all at once. You could be our sponsor, Mrs. Johnson, Red suggested. Now wait a minute, boys. You mean you would want me to be your sponsor to start this club? Mrs. Johnson questioned. Preston said, we have to have a sponsor to start any kind of club in the school, and you're the best teacher we know of. Mrs. Johnson started to smile. She hadn't realized until now how much the three boys really did love her. If being a Christian causes you three to feel like that about me after all the suspicions I've had about you, then I want to be a Christian too, and I'll be your sponsor. The three boys cheered. Boy, it sure was true when the Bible says, and we know that all things work together for good, to them that love God, to them who are the called according to His purpose. God did have something wonderful planned for Charlie, Preston, and Red, didn't He? There is nothing more wonderful than someone asking the Lord Jesus to forgive his sins and to come into his heart, and being born into God's family. If you haven't done that already, wouldn't you like to be part of God's family too?
Boys and girls, I'm so glad that I get to be with you today. I'm excited that today I get to teach you how to make animal balloons. I've been making animal balloons since I was 16 years old, and it's so much fun to make animal balloons for birthday parties, for children that I babysat. I got to make them when I was a school teacher in a Christian school, and I've had the privilege of making them for my Sunday school class, my bus kids, get to make them on big days. It's a really fun way to serve the Lord. So I'm excited that I get to show you today how to make some balloons. I've made a few for you today, some of my favorite ones. This one is the one we'll make today. It's just a basic dog. This is a little fancier dog. This is a poodle. And here we have a bunny rabbit, a mouse, a giraffe. Oh, I like this one. This is a monkey. Here we go. There's a monkey on a palm tree. This one I've made a lot. A sword. And this is my favorite one. Favorite one at all is a teddy bear. So they're lots of fun. They do take practice, but it's not difficult to make animal balloons. I have popped many animal balloons in the years that I've made them. But they just take practice, and you can do it most definitely. Just a couple things before we get started. I usually buy animal balloons at Party City or Walmart. You can certainly buy them at Amazon.com, but I always use a pump when I make animal balloons. Animal balloons are a little different than most of our balloons we have for a birthday party. They're long and skinny, and they're very difficult for me to blow up. I'm sure some people could blow them up using their mouth, but not me. So I always use a pump. This is a newer pump, but I find that after you use a pump for a while, most all the time this top part snaps off, like this one. Even though the top is snapped off though, it still works just fine. They're just cheap plastic and that top usually breaks off pretty quickly. But using this one works just fine. Something very important I want to mention, if you make animal balloons and they pop, which is definitely going to happen, as quickly as possible, you want to pick up that broken balloon and throw it in the trash. Because little babies, little toddlers, sometimes as they're crawling around, they might take a piece of balloon and just pick it up and put it right in their mouths, and babies can choke on these. So it's super important. As soon as that balloon pops, just grab it right away, throw it in the trash, and that way the little ones will be safe. So today I'm going to get started to show you how to make this basic dog. The nice thing about knowing how to make this basic dog is that you will very quickly be able to make other balloons. Just looking at this mouth, for instance, the only difference between this dog and this mouse is the size. There's a few extra twists in it, but they're basically the same animal. Same thing for this poodle. Poodle is really the same as the dog, but there's just a few fancier twists with it. And then the giraffe. I make the giraffe a lot. Here we go. The giraffe is just basically a dog with a really long neck. So a lot of fun that once you know one basic animal, you'll be able to make lots of them in no time at all. The most important thing I think about making a balloon is to make sure that you leave enough air. Because the more times I need to twist a balloon, the more air is going to be pushed down to the bottom of the balloon. So it's super important that I make sure I leave enough air. And of course, the more you practice, you'll be able to quickly know how much air you need to leave. But my rule of thumb is if I'm not sure how much air to leave, I always leave extra. Because if I don't leave enough and I keep twisting, for sure my balloon's going to pop. So for today, let's get started with this basic dog. So I'm going to go ahead and blow it up. And I'm going to leave about 6 inches of air at the end. Sometimes it depends upon the weather, but leaving about 6 inches is going to be just about right. Tying the balloon off. So when I'm working on a balloon, I always want to make sure that I squeeze the air down to the bottom of the balloon. If my balloon feels really tight, it's going to pop. So I always want to just really push. And the nice thing is, I can push really hard on this and it's not going to pop. I want it to feel nice and soft and very flexible. So the first thing I'm going to do with making this dog, I'm going to make the nose. I usually make the nose about 3 inches or 4 inches, whatever you think would be a nice nose size. And the nice thing with making these, there's really no right or wrong, not a problem. So what I'd like to do, make it about 3 inches. I want to push down on the balloon so it's nice and flexible and pinch. Pinching the balloon and then twisting it. Now if I let go, you can see that my twist is going to disappear. So again, I'm going to push down, make sure it's nice and soft, pinch and twist, and then hold it with this hand. So that's going to be the nose. The next thing I want to make are the 2 ears. You can see that I folded the ears over. So the next thing in my mind, I'm trying to measure off 2 ears. If I think an ear should be about 2 inches, 2.5 inches, I want to kind of measure that distance and then double it. So again, if I think the ear should be about this long, I want to double it. Again, push it so it's nice and flexible. Pinch off whatever I think would be good for 2 ears. So again, I have the nose. This is going to be the 2 ears. And now I'm going to take it and fold it together. Pull it, twist it. And now I have a nose with 2 ears. Let me show you that one more time. Okay, we'll start all over again. Okay, here we want to make the nose. Pushing down, make sure it's nice and soft. Pinch it, twist it. With this hand, I'm going to hold the nose. Now I want to figure out how long I want to make the ears. Again, if I want the ears to be this long, I want to double it to give him 2 ears. About that looks just about right. Now I'm going to take that, fold it in half. I can pull it and twist it together. So now that I've twisted, I've got the nose and the ears. Now this part is tight. So now I want to take the time again to push on that balloon, moving the air down so it's just nice and soft and flexible. Now I want to make his neck. I think a good neck would be about 3 inches long. So I want to pinch down. I never measure it with a rule or anything like that. I just kind of eyeball what I think would make a nice neck. There we go. So now I'm going to do the same thing that I did with the ears. I'm going to hold the neck. This is staying in place. I can let go of that with no problem. Holding the neck. Now I'm going to figure his front legs. So if I think a leg should be 3 inches or so, I want to double it. Now I want to kind of keep in mind how much air I have left, but if the front legs are longer than the back legs, it's really no big deal. So I think, all right, maybe that looks about right. Again, you want to push down, you want it nice and flexible. That looks like a good spot. Twist. Taking this, I'm going to fold it together. Nicely when you fold it, it folds perfectly in half. Pull it. And now I have his nose, his ears, his neck, and his front legs. Now for the rest of him, I can make a long body, a short body. Whatever I have left at the end is just gonna make a longer tail. So it really doesn't make any difference how long I wanna make this. But again, now that I've twisted it, this is tight again. So in order for me hopefully not to pop, I'm gonna push down on this so it's super squishy and think, okay, maybe a body about 3 inches long. That looks about good. I'm kind of looking at the end. That looks about right. And my goal is to make the front legs the same as the back legs. But like I said, if they're not, they don't match, it's not a problem. So again, looking there, again, it's tight. I want to push it down, pinching off about the same as I did for the front legs, folding it in half, twisting, and then twisting it. So again, the nice thing is whatever's left over is the tail. Like this one, I ended up with a short tail. This one, a little bit of a longer tail. No big deal. Works out just fine. So I hope you've enjoyed learning a little bit about animal balloons today. If you or your mom or dad have any questions, you are so welcome to call me or FaceTime me. I'd love to be any help I can be too. I hope you have a great day.
All right, hey, welcome back to another one of our episodes of our top 5 favorites. I hope that you've liked these so far. I've enjoyed doing them. I know my boys have enjoyed doing them. So remember, think of your top 5 so that way you can text us and then you can win. Today, we're going to do our top 5 favorite sodas. Our top 5 favorite sodas. Are you excited about this, Blake? Yeah, Blake's excited about this. So we're going to go through our top 5 favorite sodas. You think about what your favorites are so you can text us yours, all right? So without further ado, Blake, what's your number 5?
Wait.
Oh, what? I totally forgot. We got to do our honorable mentions. We got some good honorable mentions. So Blake, what are your honorable mentions?
Mine is Cherry Coke.
That's a good one. That's a good one. And what else?
grape soda.
Ooh, cherry Coke and grape soda. Cherry Coke was one of my considerations as well. My 2 honorable mentions actually probably are part of my top 5, but they just weren't at the gas station where I went to go pick up these sodas. So my 2 are Cactus Cooler. That is always, I think Blake wasn't Cactus Cooler. Yeah, Cactus Cooler is one of the best, okay? And then the second honorable mention is cream soda. I love cream soda. That's kind of like an old man's drink, but it's all right. I'm an old man now, so I like cream soda. Okay, so Cactus Cooler, cream soda. So our number 5, what's our number 5?
My number 5 is pineapple Fanta.
Pineapple Fanta. Ooh, okay. There's his number 1, pineapple Fanta. Why is that, Blake?
Pineapple Fanta is just when you take the first sip, it's just really good.
Okay, all right. He likes pineapple Fanta. That's a little bit like Cactus Cooler too. All right, my number 5 is Squirt. Squirt. Now this, some of you may not have even had this before, but Squirt here is a grapefruit soda, which sounds terrible. Grapefruit soda, but it actually is really good. I really like Squirt. Probably not as much as Cactus Cooler, so I would have put Cactus Cooler on the list, but Squirt is definitely a good soda that probably not a lot of people even had. So that was my number 5. What's your number 4, Blake?
My number 4 is...
What about Squirt? What do you think about Squirt for me? You like Squirt? Okay.
Kind of.
Yeah, okay, all right. What's your number 4?
Mountain Dew Baja Blast.
Okay, all right, Baja Blast, all right. Tell us about that one, Blake. Why do you like that one?
One of my favorite kinds of root beer is Baja Blast. I like the freezes from Taco Bell in that first sip.
And you like Baja Blast better than just regular Mountain Dew?
Yes.
Okay. Crazy, man. All right, my number 4 here. My number 4 is ginger ale. All right, ginger ale. Again, this is kind of an old man's drink, ginger ale, but I like ginger ale. There's this one kind of ginger ale called Verner's that I really like, but you can't find it many places here. So, but any kind of ginger ale. This is, when I'm on an airplane, Canada Dry ginger ale is like what I'm always getting on an airplane. So that was my number 4. All right, number 3, Blake. What's your number 3?
Canada Dry.
Man, like father, like son. I like that. Okay, show us that. Boom. I have taught him well, young Padawan. All right. Why do you like Canada Dry?
Canada Dry is kind of like an old man's drink, but it's still pretty good.
Okay, it's still pretty good, even though it's an old man's drink. Oh, thank you. All right, number 3. My number 3 is Vanilla Coke. Vanilla Coke. Now, again, this might be one that you've never had, but Coke, very good on its own. But you add just a little splash of vanilla in there and it just takes it up an extra notch right there. So if you haven't had this before, try a vanilla Coke. It's hard to find sometimes. Can't find it everywhere, but try that vanilla Coke, all right? Blake, what's your number 2?
Number 2 is apple soda.
Apple soda. Apple soda. All right, what is this? This is manzanita. All right. What do you like about apple soda?
I just like the fruit apple and just the taste in the soda.
Okay. All right. An apple soda. All right. What about my number 2? Not an apple soda, that's for sure. It is Mountain Dew. All right. Mountain Dew. This is the soda for college kids, at least back when I was a college kid, because it keeps you awake, lots of caffeine in there, and I don't know, since college, this has been my go-to right here at Mountain Dew. It's hard to beat Mountain Dew, so that's my number 2 right there. Just plain old Mountain Dew. No, none of this weird Baja Blast or red or blue or whatever nastiness they have going on next. Just regular old Mountain Dew. That is the best, all right? What do you think, Blake?
Pretty good.
Pretty good, okay, thank you. All right, Blake's number 1 is?
Root beer.
Root beer, the oldest of old man's drinks right there. All right, ooh, an A&W. Now, you like A&W more so than other brands? Why?
Because the A&W just tastes better and it's not, like if it's just the plain root beer on the thing, it's not better.
All right, good. I think Brother Matt's gonna be like that you picked out that root beer right there for your number 1, so definitely an old man's drink there. My number 1 is, dun 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 dun, it is bottle Coke. What do you mean by bottle Coke? Well, I mean an actual glass bottle of Coke. This right here is the best. And let me give you a pro tip. You better make sure that it says on the side there, Hecho en Mexico, because that means that it's made in Mexico, and that means that it's made with cane sugar, and it is just the best. You get a glass Coke that's been put into the fridge and it's ice cold. There's nothing better than that. I used to live in Africa, and we would get these for about 25 cents would be the cost for one of these bottle Cokes, and there's nothing better than a cold bottle of Coke on a hot day. So that is far and away my number one. So here's our top fives. There's Blake's top fives. All right. If you think that you can get a better list, text it to us. Text your top five to us, and then we are going to pick one winner, and you're going to be able to get your top favorite soda, and then we'll get you. As long as it's not something crazy we can't find anywhere, but we'll get it to you. All right. All right. Have a good day.